All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
John got his, okay. Where am I? Good evening. I think we have everybody ready and assembled. Councillor Carey, you mentioned you had audio problems. Did we get you taken care of?
Yeah, I'm okay. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Then I will call to order the Monmouth City Council meeting for Tuesday, September 15th. And ask everyone to mute. We've got a couple of callers that I think are folks who are also online. And if you could mute, except Phyllis, for the roll call, please.
Councillor Belts,
Here.
Councillor Carey,
Here.
Councillor Lopez.
Here.
Councillor Sharmer,
Here.
Councillor Schinkel,
Here.
Councillor Silbernagel.
Here.
Mayor Kuntz.
I am here as well. And if I could have Byron, would you, Councillor Schinkel, lead us in the flag salute this evening?
Sure.
Everyone else mute and we'll mute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And tonight we have our regular meeting, which consists
This
of
conference will now be recorded.
our regular session, and then we have a few business agenda items. We also have an urban renewal agency meeting. And in that meeting, the agency will make some referrals to council. Council and the agency have to both approve certain aspects of this work. And so we may go back and forth, or may go forth and then back, I guess. And I will handle that when we get there. So thank you. We do have time set aside for public comments. Comments from the community are entertained during the time designated under citizens' comments. I have one person here in the room with a public comment. If anyone who is on the line tonight, either by phone or logged in, would like to make a comment, please message Phyllis Bowman. Let her know your name and the topic on which you would like to speak. And I will she will be able to call on you. Speakers' comments in this forum are limited to 3 minutes, but the council welcomes additional information in writing. Typically, a speaker's comment is taken under advisement to allow time for the council to review an issue. However, the mayor or councilors may ask the speaker for additional information or may convey to the speaker some information that addresses their comment. And I would like to thank everyone for checking in this evening and your attendance of Monmouth City Council meeting. So our first item is the consent calendar that week. This consists of 3 sets of minutes. Our regular meeting on August 18th, our work session on August 18th, and then our council meeting of a couple of weeks ago. I would entertain any corrections or approval of those minutes.
Move to approve the consent calendar. I'll take the second, Darren.
Thank you. Councillor Silbernagel moved and Councillor Belts seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. So we have a couple of presentations this evening, and it's great to have one of our very important partners with the community with us this evening. Kathleen Mason is the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce. And, not what she signed up for. The chamber job is supposed to be sort of a part-time job. And I know Kathleen has been working tirelessly along with the chamber board to coordinate with both the Monmouth Business Association, the Independence Downtown Association, and 100 other partners. So I would first like to welcome Kathleen Mason, the Executive Director of our Monmouth Independence Chamber of Commerce.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening to everyone, counselors and honored guests. It's really nice to be invited to be here because it kind of helps you. I'm sure a lot of you don't know who, my face or anything like that. You probably haven't been to the chamber office, but it has been a very interesting year. I've been on board with the chamber for about a year, few months. And all I got to say is it's wonderful to be in the midst of wonderful people and a wonderful city, actually both cities, especially during these very challenging times. I was asked to come before you this evening just to go over a little bit of what the chamber has done, especially in the last 6 or so months. I'll backtrack by saying when we had our strategic planning meeting in January, we were trying to put together a plan to show the community, to show our member businesses and non-member businesses and our other strategic partners like the City of Monmouth, what is the value of membership? What is the value of the chamber? Now, we all have our own ideas, but we decided what we were going to do was to present to all of our members and non-members a great way of ways that they could promote our business, that we can promote our beautiful cities, and we would do that consistently as much as possible, especially since we have one staff member, and that's me. So who knew that COVID was going to show up? And then after that, the wildfires were going to show up. But through it all, and with, again, the wonderful people in the City of Monmouth and the City of Independence and the businesses, we've managed to just power through it and hopefully to show value to membership. First of all, as you probably know, we're at 355 Pacific Avenue, Highway 99, and we took over the whole building as of April. Now, our plan was to rent out part of it, the part we used to have, and a few little offices that are vacant on the new side. Well, because of COVID, it's been very, very difficult to rent those spaces out. We do have a tentative tenant. So consequently, that additional money that we've been paying every month has kind of eaten into our kitty. And it's really good. It's very timely that right now we're actually going through our membership drive for about 80% of our members, and we really hope that they will renew. But that being said, in the attachment that you've allowed me to contribute to your minutes tonight, the City of Monmouth has 145 registered businesses, as you probably all knew, home-based and brick and mortar, and about 59% of the businesses for both cities belong to the chamber, and that's quite a good number. So we have, not counting individual members, we have about 142 businesses. And out of those businesses, again, about 80% of that, of those businesses are due to renew this month. In response to COVID and to do whatever the chamber could do for the various businesses, we took it upon ourselves to push out as much information as possible about COVID-related SBA loans, PPE, you name it, just to be cheerleaders for the various businesses. whenever we could, we sent out information about Chariots, what Chariots was doing. Also the West Valley Hospital. We just looked at our whole landscape of businesses, and as we could, as we were able, then we tried to highlight as many as possible. Not least, of course, that would be the restaurant sector, especially considering that the restaurants employ so many local people and make up a lot of the businesses in Monmouth and in Independence. I did a count one day, and I don't know if you all realize that we have about 36 restaurants or eateries in the two cities, which is just amazing if you start to think about how many people that they can employ at any one time. So it's been really wonderful for us to partner with the city of Monmouth in order to keep some of the PPE at our office. It's been convenient for a lot of the businesses to pick up PPE. Some of the businesses are now in the habit of doing that. They've come back twice. In case you don't know, the city gave us gloves, masks, cleaning solutions, hand sanitizer, face shields, things like that we've been distributing to the different businesses. So the businesses, I have to tell you, have been extremely grateful, even if they're not telling you themselves, although we've been encouraging them to do so. We did send out 130 emails during the 5 or 6 months, which, believe me, was yeah. Thank you, Cece. Quite a lot. And we use social media extensively. I love Facebook. I've used Instagram some, but Facebook, it's the big gorilla in the room. It's really been very effective to push out information about the need about reminding people to go to the restaurants, to go to retail establishments, to just be kind to the employees who are reminding customers to wear masks and things like that. Another thing that we did in cooperation with Monmouth Business Association and led by Jeff Glott with the Grain Station was we assisted in the creation of a poster that was put up around to remind people to wear their masks, the customers and clients, when they enter a business. And we put faces of different businesses. I went around town and took pictures of the various employees so they would see this wasn't necessarily a cold government mandate. What was being asked of each and every citizen affects other citizens and other employees. So I think it's really had a positive effect. What else do we do? Oh, we've just done so much. We're also very proud of the fact that, thanks to Marilyn Morton, that we've taken over kind of ownership of 2C, 1C, the two Sigmund community publication. That's been her baby forever. And we're really proud that it now has a place, hopefully a permanent place at the Chamber. That is sent out to over 2,000 households and businesses every month. So for many businesses, that's another vehicle that shows some value to membership. So I'd also like to remind the councilors and Madam Mayor that we are very grateful for the platinum level membership that the city bestows upon us, as well as the $5,000 additional dollars that you allow us to use every year. The $5,000 helps to go towards the maintenance and sustainability of the visitor center. The visitor center for the last 6 months, whether we always could or not, has been open on Saturdays. People do drop in occasionally, but at least businesses know that there is an entity that might be able to help drive business, customers to their businesses, even on the weekend. And I'm very confident and, of course, hopeful that in 2021, that there might be just a little more activity on 99 that's more tourism related, that people will be able to get out more. I do think people are getting used to the mask and the idea of social distancing, and I think that becomes a positive part of business for Monmouth. So are we, oh, one more thing, excuse me. We also this last week turned into a donation site. So many local residents gave so much, and we stored them at the chamber office. And then Dieter Wiener of iHomes gathered them all up in his big giant Mercedes-Benz van and took them down to the Polk Fairgrounds. So that part of our community work is done, at least temporarily, and we stand ready to help the community in any other way that we can. So, Madam Mayor, are there any questions, councilors?
Anyone?
I do.
A question for Kathleen?
Yes, ma'am.
Nope, just seeing if anyone has anything for you.
Okay.
Chris Lopez, Councilor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Kathleen, for giving your time to join us tonight. Are there any, as someone that is a little bit more directly involved with the local business community on a different level, are there any needs of local businesses that you're able to identify from the chamber perspective that we might not be aware of at this time?
Not really. I think the City of Monmouth has done a really good job by providing some sort of financial relief, and I know that is the number one thing that businesses are looking for. And I know this is an anecdotal information that you have probably some hard figures on this. So many of the small mom and pop businesses are just a month, 2 or 3 away from going under. I used to own some businesses with my husband, and we used to find ourselves many times in that same predicament, and we were able to dig ourselves out. But with COVID, with something like this, it's just such a long-term haul that besides the PPE and the grants, if wishes were fishes, the businesses would just want money coming down from heaven so that way they could maintain their business. But I think the city, both cities are doing a wonderful job trying to think of what they can do and do it immediately. I listened on another meeting this afternoon, the Mid-Valley Emergency Task Force, and you could hear in Commissioner Pope's voice the minor frustration because the federal dollars will be coming to our area, but yet it's not coming right this minute. And that's what people need is the financial assistance right this minute. But that being said, Councilor, that's all the information I have for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Belts, and then Councilor Carey.
Kathleen, thank you so much for visiting with us and sharing some information about the chamber. Well, kind of 2 things. Are you still doing the $10 Tuesdays? Is that still happening with local businesses?
I'm glad you asked that, Roxanne. What we're doing is we're trying to work with MBA and IDA as much as possible on that, but because it's an all-volunteer group and we do have staff, we're going to be working with them a lot more on that because it does seem to be getting some traction. It's just getting used to the business, getting the business owners who have so much on their plate already to kind of think ahead, to strategize. And so from the chamber point of view, what I'm going to try to do is help different businesses look at the whole calendar and kind of ride on the coattails of a lot of the little events coming up where they can get creative about the $10 Tuesdays, because the chamber does feel it has really great value long term, and it's kind of a fun thing for the businesses and for the residents to get involved with. So yes, we will be moving ahead with that.
Good. So part two about planning ahead. Are you working on the chamber event for next year, the one we had to cancel this year? Is that in the works?
The board and I have talked it over. I think what we're going to continue to look at is different ways to model it. We've all watched the national political party conventions, and I'm sure we've all been part of virtual conferences. So we're still working on what that could look like. It was supposed to be, quite frankly, one of the chamber's biggest fundraisers, and we did take a hit. But that being said, when you think about it, the awards are not about the chamber per se. The awards are about the wonderful people and businesses who populate our two communities. So that's going to be in the forefront of our mind, no matter what shape next year's awards event takes.
And John?
Thank you.
Kathleen, good evening, and thank you for being here. Is there any, there was some discussion early on, and I don't know that it ever got off the ground, with some sort of a shop local program that would allow for some credit on utility bill or that sort of thing. And I'm not worried necessarily about the specifics of that, but talk about your shop local programs that you've got going on.
Well, we are helping to promote $10 Tuesdays coming up for the holidays. We do have the shop local program that I think we're just going to immerse ourselves more in this year. Last year was my first year to really get a read on what the community needed or wanted. So now that I'm more aware of that, and especially in the shadow of COVID, we just need to be more on it about shopping local. I was thinking about this meeting before we got started, and I'm always looking at chambers as ways to show outside communities and outside visitors kind of the landscape of the whole community. And we're really fortunate that we have great housing, that we have the university, that we have these small businesses. You're repopulating Main Street, you have Sippers going in, you have the new Thai restaurant, and I think this helps to kind of energize all the businesses. So what we're going to be doing, especially this fall, going forward into next year, is we're just going to be pushing shopping local. And it's really wonderful how, especially again, the restaurants have done whatever they could creatively to try to retain their customer base, because it's extremely difficult to do, especially right now. Anyone who's been setting up to go outside, they can't serve outside because of the air quality. But hopefully, in another week or so, Mother Nature blesses us with a little rain, then that's going to be a different scenario. So we really believe in shopping local, and people really do have a lot to choose from the hardware store to Roth's Market to, oh my goodness, Tractor Supply to up the street to the Find, you name it. We've got it, and it's fun, and it makes for a very wonderful community.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Really appreciate you joining us again. You've been running on all cylinders and extra hours, and your communication has been really and truly amazing. And thank you so much to you and your board for all the work that you're doing, especially as you say, these are not easy times for the organization, and really appreciate how you've stepped up. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, counselors.
So we have a second presentation this evening, and I would like to introduce Anka Matika, and she is with Yes for a Healthy Future. It's a ballot measure, I believe, and we're going to hear a little bit more about the work that she's been doing and what we can do to help this be successful. So thank you for tracking us down and getting on our agenda.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you, Mayor Coons. And apologies, with this working from home situation, I've been trying to balance how to keep my reptile lit while not blinding anybody with the lights. So if it looks a little bright, let me know and I'll try to block it as best as I can. So I'm with Ballot Measure 108. I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation for you really quick, just because it'll help kind of guide the conversation here. So Ballot Measure 108 is Oregon's 2020 tobacco and nicotine vape tax ballot measure. So for a little bit of context, this ballot measure came from the 2019 long legislative session, where it was referred to the voters by bipartisan vote to have the voters vote on it this November. So what Ballot Measure 108 will do is reduce youth vaping and smoking primarily. We know that this is a huge issue, especially in Oregon. Vaping among teenagers, 14, 15-year-olds increased by 80% in the last 2 years. We've been getting reports from teachers and working with students, and it's become such a rampant problem, especially in our schools, that it's something we need to address now. And we know that the best way to address youth vaping and youth nicotine use is to raise the price. So the idea here is that we're finally going to tax nicotine vapes, which are not taxed in Oregon, at 65% wholesale. And all of that funding will then go back into the Oregon Health Plan and into tripling the amount of funding we have for smoking cessation and prevention programs. So we know that raising the price of any product makes it more inaccessible, right? But what we know specifically is that Oregon has one of the lowest tobacco tax rates in the country. I think we rank 32nd. And we rank pretty low behind Washington. Right now we're about $1.33 a pack for a pack of commercial cigarettes. And this ballot measure will increase that by $2 to $3.33. Again, all that funding going back into Oregon Health Plan and tripling the funding for prevention cessation programs. Puts the first tax on nicotine vape products at 65% wholesale and increases the cigar tax by 50 cents to $1. And here's more information there and a better visual. We just updated our new slideshow too, so hopefully the information on this is salient with my presentation. And like I mentioned, we have a huge youth vaping epidemic. One of the first projects that I was assigned to when I joined the campaign as political director was talking to youth. So I had like 20 or 30 Zoom appointments with youth between the ages of 14 and 18 all across the state, in the Tri-County area in Eastern Oregon and Southern Oregon. And the one thing, remained pretty clear throughout all those conversations is that youth are kind of, they're targeted and they're tired of seeing their friends targeted and using these products. Kids are using them in the bathrooms, kids are using them in the classrooms, and it's about time that we stop that use. And healthcare costs related to tobacco use cost Oregon taxpayers about $1.5 billion a year. So we know that this measure will not only reduce youth vaping, but it'll save lives and it'll save Oregonians the cost of healthcare. We know that the number one most effective way to reduce nicotine addiction and save lives and lower healthcare costs to increase the price of these products. Over the past 8 months, we've seen endorsements from small businesses, from community chambers of commerce, communities all across the state, and city councilors that are sitting here tonight. And I think this is one of those ballot measures that really do have endorsed in the area. Middleton Chamber of Commerce. I think, you know, is the need to protect access to health care, to support each other, and make sure that folks are getting have a grant process and RFP process, so that those kinds of technical logistical parts of the measure are not super fleshed out. But the funding for OHP goes directly to the Oregon Health Plan, with no taking by other departments, or by, like, the DEQ can't come in and take 30% of the funding to support some project they're working on. It goes to OHA directly. Great question. Thank you.
Great. Other questions? Yes, Dr. Sharmer.
I just want to say thank you very much for doing this. It's something that's really critical. We lose way too many people to tobacco-related diseases every year. And I just put your frame on my profile picture.
Thank you, Dr. Sharmer. That's great.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Anka?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Lopez.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Anka, for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you devoting your time to this. And I'd like to echo Councilor Sharmer's thanks as well. You know, when I first heard about this, the very first question that I had was along the same lines that Councilor Beltz asked, is that, you know, reallocation of funds, because that's really, you know, a tough thing to hear about. When we hear about a lot of great initiatives, those funds become reallocated. And I really commend, you know, the measure for, and all those working on it, for ensuring that that won't happen here. The other thing I just wanted to take a moment to call out is that, and I think that you did this already, but I would highlight that this closes a loophole that allowed vaping products to not be taxed the same as other tobacco products. And I feel like it's you know, an unfortunate loophole that existed, and I'm really glad that that you found a way to help close that. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Councilor Lopez.
All right. If there are no other questions or comments, thank you again so much for giving us valuable information, and echo everyone's thanks for your work on this. Working in the school district, I can certainly tell you that any of these prevention programs are much needed and very valuable to our youth. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to our reports, and I have a brief mayor's report. I have, as with most of us, I think, been preoccupied quite a bit. It seems hard to believe it's only been a week since we woke up and found out that many of our friends, potentially family members, certainly beloved spots in Oregon probably had gone overnight. And certainly my heart goes out to those people, as I know all of you have been finding ways to donate, to support, to help wherever we can. And our community has really stepped up. Yesterday, was in a meeting with Dean Bender. Dean is the emergency manager for Polk County, and he was giving us a report on sort of how this came together. Polk County actually is set up as a specialty site. Polk County Fairgrounds, I think many of you know, welcomed folks with their animals. That became necessary. Certainly it started out with the Beachy Creek fire, and then as Echo Mountain fire in Lincoln County exploded, we were able to take a lot of animals, and that is still going on. They are hoping to not be housing folks after this week. The state fairgrounds still has room for people who need shelter there. But the Red Cross has been trying to find hotel rooms and spaces like that for people to stay so that they are not overusing congregate care. But Polk County was very involved in that. At one point, when we were concerned potentially about tens of thousands of evacuees in surrounding counties, Monmouth and Independence, the university and the school district got together and talked about sort of what our local resources would be that we could offer to the county. And they right now don't need them. But again, as has happened so many times in the last 6 months, the way that we have come together as community organizations to try to find out what we have that can help, it's been pretty amazing. So the county continues to have personal protective equipment. That equipment, much of it is slated for emergency responders, for healthcare, for residential care facilities, and they still have plenty of that to give out. So that was part of that report. As part of that, Mayor McArdle and I recorded a short public service announcement that has been shared by both cities, just trying to help quell some of the misinformation and rampant speculation about so many things related to this fire and the dangers that have happened with people believing and sharing that misinformation. We felt it was important to address some of that, as well as things the communities, both cities, were doing to support our long-term, short-term, and potentially long-term new neighbors, new residents. So there are many things still. We're working through that, but I appreciate our city staff and everyone who has come to that aid. And I think last, I will officially announce on here that we have announced the hire of Martha Marty Wine, city manager of Tigard, as our next city manager of Monmouth. And tomorrow morning, Darren Silbernagle, Councillor Silbernagle, Lane Shetterly, and I will be speaking with her and discussing some contract terms as you authorized us to do at our special meeting. We hope to have that back to you to present to you for review and ratification very soon. And welcome Marty to our community. So that's my update. And now I would entertain reports for any boards and commissions, any groups that have had meetings. Roxanne.
I've been to 3 meetings since our last council meeting. So I'll try to make it quick. The Historic Commission, they met in person, but I was meeting virtually, but the sound didn't work. So I could hear them, but they couldn't hear me, which seems like a trick that somebody was playing on me. But the things that were covered, they're continuing their work on getting there's a particular house on Monmouth Avenue they're trying to get listed on the historic register. They discussed getting a sign holder for the railroad sign display. The person that was going to make that worked for Woo, and that person retired. So they're going to have to find somebody new to make that sign holder. And they discussed a number of projects that they'd like to do, an interpretive display, maybe featuring our town founders, murals, and maybe the possibility of a project to do in partnership with the Arts and Culture Commission. And so that's the Historic Commission. The library board met virtually on September the 9th. We met via Zoom for the first time in many, many months. The board has decided to meet every other month at this point, at least through the end of the year. Due to poor air quality, the library has canceled curbside hold pickup this week through tomorrow. So hopefully when the smoke is clear, they can resume their curbside service. They have been averaging anywhere between 30 and 40 pickup appointments per day. 4 days a week. So that's really exciting. Their phone service is available Tuesday through Friday, 10 to 2 for patrons to call, to make appointments, to pick up on available holds, to get help placing holds, and then on library materials and answering questions. They also have something that I just signed up for today. You go online and you can tell them kind of what books interest you and what kind of things you want to read, and they will put together a reading list for you and then send you recommendations. And just in the last 2 months, they've had 33 requests for those. So that's really a neat service. Lastly, they're partnering with 4-H to provide some monthly virtual programs for kids. And I know one of those programs is a baking program. It's virtual. And so kids between 6th and 12th grade can sign up for that through the 4-H. Lastly, the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments met today. We are doing our executive director search. Let's see, the firm that's been hired narrowed down from about 30 applicants for the position to about 15 applicants, which 8 of those applicants have veterans preference. The search firm is going to then winnow those down just a little bit through some virtual interviews. Then they're going to send us the semifinalist recommendations. Then the executive, the search committee will meet one more time at the end of, not next week, but the week after, to discuss which candidates we actually want to bring in person for in-person interviews, tours of the region, very, very similar to our city manager search. So there you go. I conclude my reports. Thank you for your time.
And Counselor Schinkel.
The Traffic Safety Commission board met yesterday. Unfortunately, we didn't have any of the citizen members, as the only citizen member is involved in the firefighting efforts at this time. But I wanted to bring up the fact that we do have 2 vacancies for that. So we don't have enough for a quorum at this time. We didn't, so consequently, we weren't able to discuss any new business or make any new decisions, but I wanted to get that out there that we are looking for citizen members of the Traffic Safety Commission.
Thank you. And that's one that meets quarterly, so not too tough on the schedule. And Counselor Carey.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, the Planning Commission is going to be meeting tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. virtually, and the same kind of a setup that we have here. And one of the things on that agenda will be approval of a cell phone tower sort of in the north portion of town, which might be of some interest to some people. So tomorrow night, 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, and Counselor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Reporting in regarding the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance. We did have a very brief meeting. Unfortunately, this was as things were developing rapidly regarding the fires. And so we kept the meeting brief to allow individuals to go to their respective needs. But it is of note to note that the Alliance was working in conjunction with Red Cross and other local providers to ensure that our homeless population isn't adversely affected more than they already are through the course of the fires. Right now, the Alliance is still finishing up our organizational phase. So the little bit of business we did accomplish did focus on some of those, less exciting organizational matters. But it is noted that there is a group of individuals and organizations working actively to make sure that our homeless populations are taken care of in this great statewide disaster.
Great, thank you. Yes, I've been hearing about some of the work, and it's extremely timely that we're getting this put together and working again as a region to address these issues, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of work ahead. So thank you again for serving on that regional board. So seeing no others, we'll turn to interim city manager Chad Olson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. The first thing, just to compliment the council, the mayor and the council on your hire. So certainly Marty will bring leadership and experience and expertise to the position. She has been the past OCCMA, which is the Oregon City and County Managers Association. She's past president of that. So she will certainly be able to work with you to elevate the profile of the city. And I just think that you couldn't have done any better. So I just want to compliment you on where you're winding up. Now, it was a long way to get there. If you remember, a year ago, I was here answering questions. COVID, wildfires, and everything else later. But I'm just really pleased with what you've done. Now, that being said, just give her everything she wants and be done with it. A couple other things. I sent the council manager's report this afternoon. A couple things that I didn't include, just to make you aware. I do have a candidate orientation scheduled for September 28th at 12 o'clock. And 2 days later on Wednesday, the 30th, from 6 to 7. So I've sent out doodle polls to everybody that has filed for mayor or city council. So it's not, of course, it's not mandatory, but I am making myself available to kind of give a quick orientation and answer questions that they might have before the election. Also, Suzanne has completed the job description and the position announcement for an associate planner. So I believe she's going to have that posted here very soon. We'll have a first review date of October 19th. So, you know, everything seems a little slower than you want it to be, but it's a work in progress. And I think Janet found this in the council minutes, but just to make sure, because I know that she'll appreciate this. In the past meeting, I advised the council that we would be converting our Business Oregon grant loans that we've made, which are 6 so far. We have 1, I think, that is just at the very end of being finished. And we will convert the loan portions of those over to grant using the Coronavirus Relief Fund number 2, so the second round that we did. So we'll convert those all over to all grants, which I'm certain the business community will appreciate that, the ones that we've made loans to. Plus, we're in the process of contracting with an administrator to begin our small business grant program that we've been working on as well. So Suzanne's doing those, and she's doing a great job with that. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to making those dollars available. And the final thing I just want to mention, so during the last meeting when we talked about the police department and overhiring for that based upon some anticipated vacancies that we're going to see, the chief sent me a text, and he has completed 1 hire, and that's all we're going to be able to do with this round. So because we were just one of the candidates didn't make it to the finish line. And I just want to point out that this is exactly the same reason why we are looking to, at times, not every time, but at times, as part of our a management tool, is to overhire during a recruitment. If we're able occasionally to find more than 1 candidate that we think is a good fit with the department, I think it is certainly benefits the city's level of service with the police department, continuity in the department. So that being said, I did authorize the chief to go ahead and initiate another recruitment round. So he is out doing that, which again based on our experience, we'll be into that for anywhere 12 to 16, 20 weeks. But I just wanted to make you aware that I did give them the go ahead to initiate that based upon anticipated turnover. And with that, I will just open up for questions if you have any. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Any questions for Chad? Not seeing any at the moment.
Councilor Lopez.
Councilor Chris, did you have something?
Yes. One quick question regarding one of the attachments that you had emailed over, Chad. This is regarding the WU Community Health and County COVID-19 project, and I just want to call attention to this. This is a really informative document, and I would like to call out that, you know, on the first page, in the bottom right-hand corner of the first page, there is noted that there is a free testing event coming up. This is the last in a series in both Woodburn and Salem on September 23rd. I wasn't able to click the link. It's not clickable in my version here, but I'm sure that information is published elsewhere. But you know, if you think that you have been exposed, and if you have any concern about a potential exposure or something, something other personal that would prompt you to get proactively tested, this looks like a good opportunity to do that locally.
Thank you. I know the prior one that was held here was for farm workers, so I'm not sure about the upcoming one. I believe the one in Woodburn as well was mostly for agricultural workers, so we'll have to double check on whether or not that's available to the general public. But the work that Western Oregon University has been doing, and they presented to us recently, this COVID-19 newsletter is part of their communication and outreach efforts. So it is an excellent resource.
Yeah, it is absolutely a great resource.
All right, unless there's something else, I will move on to citizen comments. And tonight with us, we have Kathy Grudel. And Kathy, if you want to state your name and city for the record, and 3 minutes for your comments.
My name is Kathy Grudel, and I live here in Monmouth. And this is kind of a last minute thing, but I've been working with a friend to come and speak here about his experience that he had with the police at Jack's Pub not too long ago, where the person was arrested. Not him. He's a Black man, and I met him at college. I was taking classes last fall and winter at WU, and he was in one of the classes, and he lives fairly close to where I do, and so I've seen him quite often. And the day that, if everyone doesn't know, it's at Jack's Pub, a woman and him got in where they were arguing. I don't know all the details. I've been trying to get him to come. He is so nervous. He's scared to death about being seen out and talking about this. And so he's been working with someone about exactly what to say. And I don't think it's ever going to happen. So anyway, the lady was using racial slur against him and then pulled a knife on him. And the police were finally called and came and talked to them and left. And he was so upset. He finally went and saw the chief of police and said, "Is nothing going to be done?" He goes, "Well, we're going to investigate it." My concern is, as a Black man or any man, if he had pulled the knife, would they have let him go? Or would he have been arrested right then, put in handcuffs and put him back in the police car while they investigated it then? And so I just have a concern about that. He had a concern about that. This is a man that they have arrested her, but it took him two days to decide to arrest her. But when I first knew him at school, and then I was out walking, I saw where he lived. When the protests started in Portland with Black Lives Matter, I was upset with everything that was going on. So I went over and talked to him. I walked over that night and I said, how are you feeling about all this? And he goes, "You know, I grew up in Portland. And he goes, I'm not one to protest. He tries to stay very calm about things. He says, I just feel like you just treat everybody nice. And that's what I try to do. He says, that's how you live life. He's a great person. And yet he went through this terrible experience, scared to death. He left the police thing. He happened to see us out protesting on the street and he just stopped and he was just shaking. He was so upset. I saw him the next day and when I was out walking, and he says, I'm just staying in my house. I don't want to go anywhere. And, I just feel bad when he's not the one that was at fault, but yet he was frightened that he wasn't being taken care of in this situation. So that was the one thing I wanted to talk about. He has been working with somebody to try to come talk here, but he's just afraid. And I call him every meeting. I said, need a ride, but he never answers his phone, and I haven't seen him outside. So the other person I wanted to mention is another Black man who's lived here most of his life. And he says he gets stopped by the police all of the time for no reason. He won't come and talk because he doesn't want his family affected. His family is here in town, and this is where he grew up, and he doesn't want anything to happen to them because he complains about being stopped all the time. And this is one of the reasons I think it's so important that they have to say who they're stopping, how many times they're stopping this person, and why they're stopping this person. And that was the only reason I wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, for coming. Phyllis, did we have any other comments? She there? You show unmuted, but we can't hear you. Are you also on the phone?
Maybe she can say it in chat.
Yes, so if you want to type in the chat, if there's anyone else to call upon.
So I would just remind Kathy that we do take written comments. If that would be more comfortable for the individual she was talking about, that might be a way for him to express his feelings.
Can you tell him thank you?
Yes, thank you. And she says thank you as well, John. Well, I was going to follow up with her on that and hope we can get those, whether it's to be read into the record or just something that could be made available to all of us. I appreciate that. And Phyllis has let us know no one has asked her to make a comment. So we will continue on with our business agenda for this evening. And we have 2 business items. The first is our continuing saga of the establishment of the stormwater utility. Again, just putting something in place so that we can move forward and talk further about what that would look like. And we have
Between the second issuance and the December 31st, 2025.
Right. And I think the only thing I'd add to that is that, we kind of want to see also with this first 4 million, what we'll be able to accomplish. We certainly have a list of projects that is more than the 4 million within the next several years, but there's always timing issues. So waiting on that second 4 million is also, that's another factor for that second 4 million.
Thank you. That's a great explanation. This is a good idea, and I hope we move it forward.
thanks. And Lane, did you have something for us?
I was going to, but Janet and Chad did such a great job of explaining how the financing is going to pay for this without raising taxes. I don't need to say it again.
It's always good to have the official attorney
Blessing.
stamp of approval on the way we describe this. So, all right. So there is a suggested motion for the adoption of this resolution by the council. And then we'll take care of business as the Urban Renewal Agency. And if we have to come back and do any further business as the council, we can. But I would entertain a motion at this point about the full faith and credit backing of the Urban Renewal Agency.
I move to authorize the city to enter into a full faith and credit financing as outlined in resolution number 1908.
Thank you, Councilor Schinkel
I think it was Councilor Lopez.
and
seconded.
Councilor Lopez for the second. Thank you very much. And a resolution authorizing full faith and credit financing. And roll call, please, Phyllis.
Counselor Schinkel,
Yes.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Sharmer,
Yes.
Counselor Belts,
Yes.
Counselor Silbernagel.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Appreciate that. Well, let's,
Oh, I was just big thumbs up on this one. I'm all
yes,
excited about it.
one of Chad's get his off his
Get her
plate.
done.
Not only get these projects done, get somebody else in here. So, all right. And now Mr. Cooper has audio. So we will go to Russ to talk about the stormwater utility second reading.
No, he doesn't have audio.
Or he doesn't have audio because
Did he
we
call
still
in?
can't hear you,
Is he on
mister.
the phone?
I thought he was caller 6, but did you go away?
Is he muted on the phone?
Russell. Oh, yeah, I thought he was caller 6, but I don't see
How about
caller
that?
6.
Does that work? Does that get me in?
Hey.
Hey, all right. Well, thank you for your patience while we figured that one out. Yes, thank you. Tonight is the second reading of ordinance number 1394, an ordinance establishing a stormwater utility. After your first reading on September 1st, there were a couple of changes that were recommended to the ordinance. They're minor changes. The first one identified in the staff report is section 1, paragraph 13.45.010. It's got some redundant words with said fund. So said fund was removed from that section. And then in section 2, the effective date, that has changed to reflect a January 1st, 2021 effective date of the ordinance, better to reflect council's intent. I think it's worth mentioning that the ordinance itself does not set a fee or collect revenue for the stormwater utility. A stormwater rate resolution would be needed to be adopted by City Council. At this point, we're looking to bring a draft stormwater rate resolution to a council work session later this year with implementation of that resolution projected to occur in early 2021. With that, I am available to take questions.
All right, thank you for that. And any questions or comments at this time? I think we all received a copy of a letter from one of our local businesses talking about the stormwater utility. And I would like to say we got a good presentation about how businesses were contacted, specifically those who potentially might have a larger fee based on the impervious surface, their parking lots, their particularly. And I thought it was a good, thoughtful letter. And what I really appreciate is the business owner let us know that Russ and his staff had done a really good job of explaining the need for the stormwater utility. The business owner actually supported the formation of a utility as much as anyone would like to pay a new fee or tax. But the fact that his comments were really about the level of service, and I think that's the question we will undertake next. What is a reasonable level of service? Many other communities that have had these fees for decades have much lower rates because they started low. They've built up money for the capital projects that are allowed under this kind of utility fee. And unfortunately, having not done that, we were looking at some higher rates. And those are certainly things we will be able to continue to discuss. So this is, in order to move that next conversation forward, we have to finalize this one. So there is a sample motion. Councillor Carey.
Yeah, this is something that I think we need to move forward in terms of being able to address both transportation issues and systems, as well as our stormwater treatment. The thing that's disappointing to me, and I'm going to just say it one time, and that is that we're not really providing any incentive for those to go beyond just simply what the code is. And, you know, as we look forward to a sustainability, if we do a sustainability position that that the city may undertake, you know, the fact that we've not included on this some sort of an incentive on this for property owners, large property owners, not residents, not residential, but the large ones, will be a glaring omission. So it's something we need to go forward at some juncture. But again, I'm just not on side with this one because it lacks the things that I've mentioned.
Thank you for your consistency in reminding us that there are options for the future that could perhaps improve this, that could tie into a larger vision for the encouragement of sustainable development. I appreciate that very much, Councillor Carey, and hope you're around to continue to remind us of this for a long time to come. That would be great. Councillor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'd like to touch on the same topic that Councillor Carey did touch on. I too share those concerns regarding the city, not building in a financial incentive for businesses to be able to access a lower rate if they're doing more for the environment and more for the health of our stormwater system and environment as a whole. My concern extends that another step, though, to homeowners as well. And I know that through all the discussions with our consultants, we weren't able to find an equitable way to provide homeowners those same rebates that we would offer to larger landowners and businesses. And I hope that we do move forward with looking for creative solutions to make those rebates universal and fair, be it an individual homeowner or be it a larger corporation. My concern with the concept initially of only providing those rebates for larger landowners owners was that it then shifted the financial burden more toward homeowners because they weren't able to access those same rebates. So I look forward to a future in which we're able to incentivize all to take care of our environment and provide those fiscal incentives therein.
Thank you, Russ.
Yeah, what I wanted to maybe add to that is to thank both Councilor Carey and Lopez for those ideas. And in the process so far, what we've talked about with the ordinance is a credit for going above and beyond or installing these types of features. As we move down the road, what we may want to consider as we have revenue built up in that fund would be some sort of a program that it was a one-time cost toward the construction of those types of facilities above and beyond that would protect the environment. It's a one-time cost to the city and not an ongoing cost that gets spread among all ratepayers. So it's another way to look at how can we have a positive benefit toward the environment and still maintain affordable rates in the utility.
Yeah, thank you. And also reduces the administrative cost of trying to administer credits and rebates, which, John.
Good points all. And but while this is in part an environmental concern and it's driving me, it's also one that reduces the impact on our infrastructure. If we're collecting storm runoff in rain gardens, that's not going into our system, which requires more modest piping size and a variety of other things. So it's certainly an environmental issue, but it's also one that reduces the impact on the system. Anyway, good. Thank you, Bill.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I am going to entertain the motion.
I move that the council adopt ordinance number 1394, an ordinance establishing a stormwater utility.
Thank you, Councilor Schinkel. And a second. Thank you, Councilor Silbernagel. Moved and seconded for ordinance number 1394, and seeing no additional comments or questions, roll call, please, Phyllis.
Councilor Silbernagel.
Aye.
Councilor Carey.
No.
Councilor Schinkel.
Yes.
Councilor Beltz.
Yes.
Councilor Lopez.
Aye.
Councilor Scharmer.
No.
Passes 4-2.
Thank you, Phyllis, and thank you all. And now more discussion ahead on this. So at this time, I will entertain any quick council comments and then take just a couple minutes before we recess the council meeting to reconvene as the Urban Renewal Agency. So council comments? John?
Pretty excited about Martha Wine, Marty Wine coming on board. Congratulations to both Chad and Cease and Darren for their work on the recruitment piece and all the rest. But that's going to be good.
Thank you, John. Thank you all for returning. And if Phyllis is available, I will call to order the Tuesday, September 15th meeting of the Monmouth Urban Renewal Agency and ask for the roll call of board members.
Mr. Carey,
Here.
Mr. Lopez,
Here.
Dr. Sharmer,
Here.
Mr. Schenkel,
Here.
Mr. Silbernagel,
Here.
Ms. Belts,
Here.
Ms. Kuntz.
And I'm here as well. I don't see anyone here for citizen comments. Did we have anyone connect about the Urban Renewal Agency, Phyllis, regarding citizen comments?
I did not receive anything, Mayor Kuntz.
Thank you very much. We have a brief bit of business. Our consent calendar is to approve the minutes of our last agency meeting, which was the meeting of August 18th. I think we've had more Urban Renewal Agency meetings in the last 6 months than we've had in the last 5 years, but please, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes or note any changes.
I move approval of the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Silbernagel.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? Great, thank you. I would like to ask a moment of privilege for the chair here to do a bit of adjustment on the agenda, and that is we do have some callers who are representatives of the project that we are discussing regarding the Monmouth Commons. That item is number 4 on our agenda this evening, and I would like to move that to number 1 unless there are any objections. Seeing none, we will go to our, I don't know what your title is here, buddy, but whatever Chad's title is, he is our interim executive director of the Urban Renewal Agency.
Correct. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry.
Chair.
Exactly, it's chair.
Chair.
So this item, and let me hold it up in front of me. There was just so you know, there was a update to the development agreement that was sent out before the meeting. So there is a updated memorandum or updated assistance and development agreement that you should be looking at. It's comparable to the one that was included originally with the council packet, where the city attorney and I are continuing to work on a few nuances to it. Primarily the addition that was sent out today added some to it. Instead, we're still working with the owner to ensure the times that we attach it are suitable for their project. So I would anticipate possibly the dates changing. So that being said, there's a memorandum in the packet, and it talks to the Monmouth Commons project, and there was a request made by the owner, and I'll mention that Don Sylvie is in attendance as well as the owner. Don is the commercial contractor, or I think of him as the representative of the owner. So Don presented a request to the agency to provide some financial assistance or incentives to the project. And we did meet and have those discussions. The meeting included myself, Suzanne Duffner, the Community Development Director, and Russ Cooper, the Public Works Director. And we went through the list, and the ask is included in the council's packet. So essentially, just kind of cutting to to the chase as to what the ask and was and what the agreement. What we agreed to make a recommendation up to the agency. So you can see through it, in short, the request or the recommendation to the agency is to provide $381,103 of incentives to the project. And how that breaks down, and you'll notice there was a typo, I believe, that was in the staff report. I'm sorry, I'm getting chat messages while we're doing this. So I think there's an error that I rounded it off, but the actual number is $381,103. And what that is, and I'll just walk through the three areas that the proposed development agreement touches on. And of course, the city attorney is here as well. So Lane, please feel free to jump in. The agency would contribute.
Just a second. Phyllis?
We're good. Sounds good.
It got me.
Okay. So the agency would provide $38,003 not to exceed. So these are not to exceed amounts to the project for system development charges that could be applied to any of the system development charges. The owner would pay $200,000. So again, all of these amounts are not to exceed amounts. The building permit fee, so the agency would contribute up to $50,000 towards the project, again, not to exceed. And down below, the third item had 6 sub-items that were attached. I'll point out that item number 6 was removed in its entirety, so we're talking about the first 5 of that. The first one has to do with replacing a water line. The second one has to do with sewer improvement. The third one is a storm line improvement. The fourth and fifth are related to electrical and power improvements required by the project. So that would, for that item, those 5 would be $293,100. Again, a not to exceed amount. So that's the entirety of the agreement, the $381,103. So that's kind of just a quick review of what the item provides. We also are requesting the owner to, as it relates to the water and sewer improvements, to expand the scope of those 2 items. There's additional work that the city would, Public Works would like to complete and be funded. The extended improvements are included in the Urban Renewal Agency's capital improvement plan. So we would ask the owner to make all of those improvements on a reimbursement basis. So let's say the water line, for example, so they would be responsible for the midsection. Let's say it's in three sections, and the city shoulders the projects, the owner's section that they're responsible for. So they would complete sections A, B, and C. B is their section. We would develop the agreement in such a way that they would, the Urban Renewal Agency's contribution to their section B would be not to exceed X, as we've discussed. And then the sections A and B, the shoulders to their piece, would be completed on a reimbursement basis. And usually those projects are pretty quick to occur, so I wouldn't expect them to take more than a couple weeks, but Dawn could probably talk to that better than I could. So we do, I do support the recommendation to the council for the agency to participate in this redevelopment project downtown. We think that certainly it will complement the downtown business district, provide increased housing opportunities with the 27 units. So you increase the amount of walking traffic, let's say, in the downtown business district. Certainly will complement the City Hall project and also the Oddfellows project that we're looking at. So we think it's not only is the project a great project for downtown Monmouth, which there's no doubt about that. And I've been free with that praise to the owner quite a bit during our conversations. But I think it does warrant the Urban Renewal Agency's participation in the project. So with that, either Lane put together the development agreement. If you have any questions about the agreement itself, Lane's available to answer those questions, or I can talk to the financing.
Yeah, if I can just very briefly on this, since this agreement is still under negotiation, I think what you would be approving tonight would not be the specific agreement, but you would be approving the participation by the Urban Renewal Agency in this project as outlined in the agreement. So that you're approving the general outline of the agreement. There will be some language changes, but it won't be any material changes. But since there will be some changes, your motion would not be to approve the specific agreement, but to approve the agreement with the developer and the owner as outlined in the agreement that you see in front of you.
Great. So, and partly my question, since that typo, the 381,103 in the agreement is wrong, and then the dates, as you mentioned.
Yes,
so.
yes. We would correct those.
Right.
The Scribner's errors is basically what they are.
Right. But
And-
we'd be approving as to form and
Correct.
and the agency participation.
Correct. The owner is anxious so they still need to finish up the financing on the project. They do want to be able to carry this into the whoever the lender is to demonstrate the agency's participation in the project.
Okay, so slightly over 50% of the ask, including all of the SDCs. And again, remember, when it says waiver, what we are approving is that revenue will still go to the city. So the agency would commit the funds basically in the instance of the SDCs and building permit fees. We would just be paying the city for those things. So we are not foregoing revenue to city funds.
Correct.
Okay, other questions or comments here?
I know Councilor Schinkel had his.
Yeah, Councilor
hand up.
Schinkel had his hand up a bit ago. I mean, not Councilor, Mr. Schinkel.
Oh.
Byron.
Get your meetings right. Is this, Chad, you mentioned that in the bill that we received, you said the district has sufficient financial capacity to undertake the proposed development agreement. Can you talk a little bit more about that, what you mean by that?
So again, after this item, you'll pivot over to the same discussion the City Council had regarding the borrowing. Now, there is some discussion about how much money the loan can provide for some of these redevelopment type projects, but the agency does have reserve available, sufficiently available for the project. And plus, come December, January, you will also receive additional proceeds that will be able to support the project. So there is the question, quite honestly, with the loan that we will be seeking, the $4 million that the underwriters have talked about not using the proceeds of the loan for redevelopment projects. Quite honestly, I don't understand that per se. But that being said, we will certainly honor that portion of the loan. But looking at the existing reserves and anticipated increment that's going to be coming in over the next couple months, there's sufficient capacity to finance the work, or to finance the agreement. Now, that being said, also, let me just point out, though, so the infrastructure pieces, the water and sewer, probably the stormwater piece, maybe even the electrical piece, I believe those will be available to use from the loan proceeds that we're going to receive. It's the system development charge contribution and the building permit contributions that we would be have to use existing reserves. And Janet's nodding her head at me,
Yes,
so I believe that's correct.
Bond counsel has indicated that private development work like this is not necessarily eligible because of the full faith and credit nature of the city's involvement. But we have other, as Chad says, we have other reserves within urban renewal as well as appropriations to do this.
And those public portions of the infrastructure improvements financeable to the district.
Yeah, it's just $381,000 is a little bit of sticker shock for me here. I'm just wondering, have we ever done something of this magnitude for a private project? And what percentage of the total project would this outlay be?
So the answer is yes. You have done something comparable to this with a private project when the agency contributed $300,000 to the Ash Creek Station project to offset their system development charges. The other thing that
I'm guessing it's not proportionate, though. I mean, this is asking for what, 30% more. And I'm guessing the project total is significantly less than the Ash Creek.
Well, it is, depending on how it gets assessed when it's completed. So it could range anywhere from $4.5 to $7 million, let's say. But the difference, though, is that with the water, sewer, storm, those are infrastructure projects that are required by the city. So we're going to provide benefit to the district, an ongoing benefit to the district in its infrastructure, equal to the CIP includes $320,000 for infrastructure projects. So the agency will be financing that piece. I think the number to focus on, if you're trying to kind of shake this out to apples, would be the non-infrastructure amounts. Yeah, the non-infrastructure amounts, which would be the
$88,000.
Yeah, the $38,003, the $50,000 for to go towards the building permits. I think that would be the comparable item. The other is infrastructure improvements that will benefit district-wide.
Okay.
Including our city hall.
Yeah.
When we enlarge City Hall, we'll need those same improvements in this area.
Okay, so so what I hear you saying is from that $293,000, spending that here on this project will decrease the amount we have to spend on other projects.
It will.
We were going to do it anyway.
Well, the short answer is yes. It depends on how you angle yourself to look at it. There's any project within the district area of, say, within a 2 or 3 block area that will benefit from the improvements. That being the City Hall project. There could be any other redevelopment projects that will derive some benefit from that. So that's why, in looking at your question, we know that there's infrastructure in the downtown business district that requires improvements that will benefit a number of projects. The first being the Monmouth Commons project, but also the City Hall project for sure will receive benefits. which is part of the reason that for oversizing, let's say, expanding the scope of the project, the water and sewer projects, to provide benefit for additional properties. So in this sense, yes, they're going to get a direct benefit from the project being the first one up, but any other redevelopment projects that come down within the area will also receive some benefit from the improvements.
So there's synergies here where
Yes.
it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Councilman Lopez.
Yes, and Chris, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. So if I'm understanding this correctly, and regardless of I know that we covered the locality of the benefit to this third piece, but if I'm understanding this correctly, looking down into the discussion regarding the sub items of the third item, this infrastructure improvement segment. I understand that the bulk of this, if not, it looks like potentially all of this is already included in the CIP elsewhere. So whether it's done now or done later, benefit locally or benefit to the city as a whole, it's already something that we had earmarked to complete. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So essentially what we're talking about for this bulk portion of it is a timing variance, doing it now as opposed to whenever we were planning on getting to it. And then we're talking about $88,000 in the building permit fees and the SDCs. Is that what I'm understanding? All right, that sounds pretty straightforward to me. Thank you.
The benefit to, of course, the benefit to the owner is the fact that they don't have to make the infrastructure improvements at their expense. So even though, because, the agency, it's required as part of their project, the water line replacement, the sewer improvements, and so on, that's required by their projects. So whether the agency participates or doesn't participate, they're required to do that in order for their project to move forward. The agency is just, instead of requiring them to require their, because they're conditions of approval. So we're just stepping in and picking those costs up on their behalf. But still, they're projects that we understand need to be completed within the downtown business district.
So as a follow-up then, if let's say that they were not building there now, these items are already in the CIP, and so at some point, whether it's a year, whether it's 5 years down the line, wherever it may be, that we actually get to this, the city was planning on funding these improvements regardless of whether this building went in. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So that this seems to me like a potential way to, two birds with one stone, and it looks like a big amount off first glance, but when we go and say that almost $300,000 of it were items that we've already earmarked and already discussed and talked about completing, looks like just something getting bumped to the head of the line as opposed to letting it languish.
Yeah, but so I will also point out that in my past experience, we would develop and I'm not sure that the city of Monmouth has it, but I've had the cities pass reimbursement ordinances so that as we make improvements that have, identified underdeveloped or undeveloped properties adjacent to it, that we would make those improvements subject to possible reimbursement at some time, anywhere with the 10 to 15 year limit before it's released. So I have done those in the past, and I think if we were moving forward without having the project on the commons. I would probably at least be talking to Lane about a reimbursement ordinance so that the agency and the city can recoup some of its investment for projects that are currently underdeveloped or undeveloped, because there is this notion that, you know, everyone should pay their fair share of, as they put burdens on the city's structure. In this case, I don't think you need to do that because, you know, we have pretty much all the players sitting at the table that are going to derive benefit from the improvements that we're talking about.
And I will mention, I think we have one other project in the past, and I know Darren, John, and probably I see our former mayor, John Oberst, our former chair of the Urban Renewal Agency, the Katrin Street Apartments. I think we also did some SDC reimbursement from the Urban Renewal Agency, and I was trying to think of that amount, Byron, just to again sort of get scale, but I can't recall what that was. So.
And Cease, we also did development assistance with the apartments, the building on the corner of Monmouth and Main. So we've invested both in development as well as payment of SDC charges in the past.
That's correct. And John, Kerry.
You know, I think, and thanks all of you for noting what we've done before. You know, as recently as the 300,000 we assisted on the on the S-curve development, that went down pretty easily. This is exactly what this money is made for. It is collected for, and you know, while there's a fair amount that the agency is going to pay. Just on this alone that we're considering, the owner is going to pay a significant amount there as well. This is going to be, and I think you said between, you know, depending on how it gets assessed, $4.5, maybe up to $7 million investment on a lot that we have been dying to get. You know, we're anxious to get Clay's Auto Parts out of there, if you can remember that, and we spent time and money on you know, a nice development that we thought was going to happen but didn't. This is precisely what this is for, and you know, I think we need to be anxious to assist with this type of development. You know, it may seem like a lot of money, but they're spending a lot of money. And you know, I think it's a good deal. I think it assists and fills out our overall infrastructure, and more than just the owners and the development will benefit from this.
Thank you, John. Byron, you had another?
Yeah, and I appreciate the discussion. Largely, my questions are making sure that we can explain this to people, because this isn't, we're not playing with house money here. We're playing with, you know, people's personal money. So being able to explain to people why we're doing things, stuff that we might take for granted because we understand the process, is hugely important. At least it is to me, and I'm sure it is to most other people as well. My second question is, you know, in this agreement, I don't see any sort of, and maybe I missed it, but a timeline. This isn't like an open-ended offer in perpetuity here or anything. How does this encourage like speed development? I mean, other than incentivizing it, does it have a sunset on the availability of these funds or anything like that?
So I can, Lane can answer it as well, but the revised agreement that went out this afternoon to the agency includes some timelines for issuing building permits, paying the SDC fees. So that would kind of be think of that as the trigger to start the process. We're looking at And this, I think, the dates are still a little subject to negotiation with the owner because their timeline, on these type of projects tend to be a little bit fluid on the front end as to the start dates. But we were looking at in October to trigger the issuance of building permits and the payment of SDCs. So that's kind of starts the project. And I think, as I mentioned to some of our team, really then you're off to the races because the owner has paid money. And once they pay money, they want to get in and out as quickly as possible. That's the longer it takes, the more expensive the project is to them. They can't take occupancy of the building. They can't get rental income related to the apartments and those things. Second is in terms of completing the public improvements that we've talked about under the third category. Right now we're looking at the summer of 2021. So could be June, July, somewhere out there. That would be the completion of the improvements and dedication over to the city. So at that point, I think that certainly the owners would be hopeful that the project would be completed by then with a certificate of occupancy issued by next summer.
I just add to that, Byron, if the finish date, the completion date is, finally get the contract settled, if those improvements, the infrastructure improvements are not done by that completion date, then the city can take over and complete, and they're responsible for the cost of that, and we can offset any unpaid reimbursements at that point against the what they would owe for the finishing of the project. So it's an incentive, it's a penalty, but yeah, there are some dates in there with consequences.
And John?
If we have it readily available, fine. If not, that's okay too. But I'm curious about, we're talking about investing $381,000 here. Given the increased valuation of that property and the as we began to collect increment on that new value, any idea of when that will be paid back?
The
ROI.
The country, yeah. No, I wouldn't be able to say because we don't know for certain what the AV is going to be on the project, and it could be with the timing. The first payment may be not come in until the year after, so it would be down the road. But I think certainly a return on investment measure is something that you would be worthwhile to circle back. Identifying those things, metrics are certainly good record keeping related to the agency. I'll also point out that in discussions with the owner, we talked about job creation. We talked about the creation of the additional apartments downtown and, kind of the benefit. To some extent, it's not like a large industrial project or the S-curves project where you see a lot of new employment that's going to happen. You will see some new employment, I would expect, related to this. But I can't say that with certainty. But instead of a quantitative number, this one I tended to see more as a qualitative addition to the downtown because of the synergy that you get with the new housing that's being created, the commercial space that's being created. So it's more of a qualitative improvement versus quantitative.
I would agree with that, but wholly. But it does need to be noted that when this project is completed, there will be additional revenue that's going to flow primarily into the urban renewal agency initially, but when that goes away, then to the city's general fund. So it will pay itself. We will be paid back for that, and it's really not a big deal, but it just can't be lost that that's going to happen.
And I agree with you, and I think that's something for sure that Janet can make note of and say a year from now you report back on the estimate, the increment that would be added to the district's value, and its increment that it receives from taxes.
All right. Thank you for that. We do have a couple of more items to get through tonight. So if everyone is amenable, I would entertain a motion. Again, not the motion in the packet because we're not quite ready to sign off on this actual development agreement, but participation by the Urban Renewal Agency.
Madam Mayor, I think the motion could include not to exceed $381,003.
$103.
I was just going to say that, $383,103. Thank you. The chair notes your interjection, Councillor Shetterly. So I would entertain that motion and perhaps additionally authorizing our executive director to continue negotiations regarding timelines and details of the agreement.
I move. Thank you, Chair. I move to how do we word this? I move to make known the Urban Renewal Agency's support for this agreement and authorize the interim manager to continue negotiations, not to include $381,000 or $381,103,000. I don't know. My apologies. You get where I'm going. $381,103. There you go.
And I'm sorry, and you said not to include or not to
not to exceed $381,103. Thank you. There's some good comedy for you all tonight.
This time of night, that's what we get. And do I hear a second to that motion? Thank you, Mr. Carey. So moved by Mr. Lopez, seconded by Mr. Carey.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just for the record, the understanding being that with this motion, you are approving the participation in this project, and that as long as it's not materially different, you're authorizing Chad to execute an agreement that reflects what we have discussed and what you see in your packet tonight.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I feel confident that that's contained in the motion.
Yeah, just so you know, the owner is, it's important that they will be able to, it's important for them to carry forward something from my office that obligates the agency to that 381,103.
Right, to take to their lenders.
Yes.
All right. And seeing no additional questions or comments, I will ask for all in favor. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. We will go ahead and continue those negotiations, but based on that not to exceed amount, get moving on that project. And again, as John said, something we have all dreamed of for a very long time. It will be most exciting and glad we can assist in some way with this private investment.
Don, I'll be in touch with you tomorrow.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and to all of the committee members. Have a good evening.
Thank you. All right. So back to our business agenda. We will look at item number 1. We have another resolution from the agency, and this is again authorizing the indebtedness. The item that the financing we have previously discussed. So I'm guessing we get Janet.
Indeed.
On this item.
Thank you, agency members. I would like to present you with yet another staff report and resolution and intergovernmental agreement that look very similar to what the city council just looked at. The difference being that the intergovernmental agreement is identical, that is attached to the resolution. But from the agency perspective, what the agency is committing to is to use those tax increment dollars to support repayment of the loan that the city is willing to take on. And so in the staff report, again, I've outlined what the agency would be committing to, which is a $4 million, up to a $4 million set of payments over time plus interest that the city will undertake, and that payment will continue over up to 15 years unless we prepay, and that will depend on what the prepayment clauses are in whatever bank loan the city is able to obtain. So this resolution, again, it speaks in terms of indebtedness, which is how the urban renewal language works as far as our ability as an urban renewal agency to take on indebtedness. And that is what resolution number 37 seeks to do, as well as committing to allowing the interim executive director and myself to finalize agreements in that regard. And with that, I would take questions.
Any questions? John?
How does this interface with the decision the council just made?
So what
is this sort of just activated?
Sorry, I missed that last word.
Activated, the decision council made to offer full faith and credit for this financing?
Correct. It's kind of, they're very chicken and egg in the sense that we wouldn't probably proceed as council, the council would not proceed with the full faith and credit financing if the agency was not willing to back that full faith and credit with the tax increment. And again, that's why we have the intergovernmental agreement that is associated with both resolutions, is so that the agency, it will be agreeing to do the tax increment financing as not quite a pledge, but it is a pledge, but it's not considered to be security on the tax increment financing because the city is the one that holds the loan. However, the agency is pledging to use their tax increment financing, sort of how the sewer loan that we have, the city has, is backed by sewer revenues, even though it is also a full faith and credit loan on the city's general fund if for some reason there isn't sufficient revenue to use to repay it. But based on all projections, the tax increment financing should be available to make the payments as we're planning to structure the loan. Does that answer your question?
Or did that make it worse for anyone?
Right.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Chris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've spoken about this in high level news in the past, but just to refresh my memory and clarify for the record, this does not necessarily add any indebtedness to the city per se, because it will be repaid through the tax increment from the urban renewal district as that comes over time. Is that correct?
So because it's a full faith and credit loan, it will be reflected as city debt and included in any debt ratios that we present. We're actually not going to seek the credit rating for this particular bank loan, but we would not expect it to heavily influence our debt schedule because it is only $4 million. I know that sounds like a lot of money, but relative to other debt that we have, it is not a significant add. And we do have a very good credit rating on our other issues. So we're A2 with Moody's and A+ with Standard & Poor's on all of our other outstanding debt. And so all of that to say, it will be a city debt reflected on the city's financial statements. However, the risk is significantly reduced, I will say, by the fact that the tax increment is pledged to pay for that by the urban, as long as the Urban Renewal Agency agrees to pledge those tax increments.
Can I just?
Oh, yes.
So if you don't mind, Council or Director Lopez.
Mr. Lopez.
Just to follow up. So Janet, what would happen if the city didn't pledge its full faith and credit behind the loan?
We would not get as good an interest rate on this loan. So that is where it really is an addition to, it will bring down the total interest that we will pay through the Urban Renewal Agency effectively by doing it in this mechanism.
Yeah, the only reason I bring that up is some agencies have the experience and the capacity that they will complete their own issuances as compared to smaller agencies that rely on full faith and credit of the city to kind of backstop the loan or the issuance.
So to loop back around here though, for what it means for the taxpayer, not necessarily for what it means for the city's debt ratio or credit rating on a high level, for what it means to the everyday taxpayer, this will not be an increase in their obligation. This is just the pool of funding to kick off the work that we're about to do with the Urban Renewal District. And the city is essentially co-signing on it.
Correct. We're the parent. The city will be the parent on this loan.
Yeah, and it's as the earlier explanation went, the increment is already part of the taxes that are collected. It's just that increment is provided to the agency, and so the taxpayer has no impact on the taxpayer. It's just they has zero impact.
Excellent, thank you. That's helpful.
John. Sorry, John.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to move approval of resolution number 37, authorizing indebtedness for capital projects described in the Urban Renewal Plan for the Monmouth Urban Renewal District. That will frame our conversation tightly, I think.
Second.
Mr. Carey for the motion to adopt resolution number 37 and Ms. Belts for the second. And if there are no further questions or comments, we'll have a roll call, please. Phyllis.
Ms. Belt,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yay.
Mr. Silbernagel,
Yes.
Ms. Coons,
Did you hear me? Sorry, aye. My computer.
Mr. Okay, Mr. Schinkel,
Yes.
Dr. Sharmer,
Yes.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you very much. 6-0. I voted. Wasn't it 7-0?
7-0, yeah.
Should be 7-0.
Oh, Ms. Belt. 7-0. All of us. I got to vote. I got to vote.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you. And now we move on because, again, very busy night for us. So let's talk quickly about that capital improvement plan. And then we will potentially have another resolution regarding something in the capital improvement plan.
Well, specifically, thank you, Chair. Specifically, it's not so much to review the CIP, it's the discussion is going to, as it is related to the Monmouth City Hall project. So 6 weeks ago, we provided the agency with a draft capital improvement plan basically showing the sideboards that put on the $8 million to $8.25 million maximum indebtedness. So we worked with the department directors to identify the infrastructure projects that would be eligible for improvements within the district. We also identified community facilities and some other non-infrastructure related components that go into the CIP as it relates to redevelopment or economic development funds. So those would relate to the action that the agency just took with Monmouth Commons to offset building permit fees, SDCs, and so on. So in the CIP, there's a category there related to, for the most part, non-infrastructure related projects. So this discussion originated in July or maybe early August, when the architect for the City Hall project responded back, came in, gave their final report with cost estimates related to the project. And it was approximately $9 million, where we had been at least using a placeholder number up to that point of about $7.5 million. So I think Janet and I, during my time here, we've been talking about in the $7 to $7.5 million range. The estimate came in at $9 million. And even then, there was an allowance that the architect provided related to interior furnishings, and typically that's 5% of a project cost. We reduced that to 2.5% with the rationale that that's the allowance to move in, but over a year or two, if you remember this conversation, we can use on pay-as-you-go type of philosophy to kind of fill out the building itself. So what the council asked for, given the fact that the City Hall project is an urban renewal agency project, there is a resolution that Lane's going to brief you on. I doubt that we'll ask you to approve it tonight, but it's important for you to be familiar with the resolution because it deals directly with the City Hall project in terms of its ability to be an agency project. So anyway, so after we saw that the project cost had increased to the $9 million, we said that we would come back with a discussion of options to possibly increase the urban renewals participation in the project. So that's what this does. I think that's all the lead-in I'll do, because really we're just talking about how much the agency will provide to the project. I mean, that's kind of the long and the short of the conversation. So if you look at the staff report on the first page, it talks to what the base option. So when I refer to the base option, this was what we originally anticipated to provide to the project, the agency. So we included $2.25 million for the project. There is a strategy to provide general city contributions to the project with the based upon the idea that the city houses operations that support the public works, the building department, the power and light department, and so on, so that each of the various funds would contribute a prorated share to the project. So the FY21 budget included $1 million per year in the 21, and then another $1 million in FY22. So that's part of the strategy. That would be included with the existing $375,000 that the city is holding currently in reserve for the project. So that was based upon past contributions to a reserve for the project. And in the base option, we were looking at the GO bonds contribution to the project, and that's what I will refer to as a residual amount. So based upon a $7.5 million project, that amount would be $3 million or thereabouts. but based upon an increased project cost, that amount increased to $4.375 million. So this is where, given the fact that the city was looking at the GO bond amount and saying, you know, that's pretty steep. Is there anything that we can do to affect that? That's where the agency now is looking at these different options. So for the different options, there is a little discussion, and then there's some bullets for each one talking about basically the pros and cons. And I'm not saying that this is an exhaustive list of options or pro and cons, but, you know, just to kind of put some sideboards on our discussion. So the first option is to increase the urban renewal contribution by $1 million. So increase it from $2.25 million to $3.25 million. And what that would do, we would leave the city reserve contribution the same, so $2.375 million. And you can see the GO bond would be reduced to $3.375 million. So that's option one. Basically, again, it's a pretty straightforward discussion, increasing the agency's contribution by $1 million, reducing the bond amount by a corresponding $1 million. And the big takeaway from that is, so you would be reallocating $1 million from other urban renewal projects to this project. So obviously that's going to have some negative impact on those other anticipated projects. But at the same time, the reduction in the GO bond probably would make it more attractive to the voters. Now I can walk you through. What I wanted to do is just get through the options, and then we can pivot over to the pages that are provided, and I can answer any questions so you can see what the impact. So if we move $1 million from other projects to the City Hall, I can just walk you through and show you where that's going to affect the projects listed on the CIP. The only thing I'll mention in advance is that at least on the first option one, the $1 million, I tried to not impact any brick and mortar infrastructure projects. So if we were going to reallocate amounts, I was going to focus on what I considered, maybe not others would agree with me, but what I considered to be less priority projects. So that being said, I'll just kind of try to go through the options quickly and then pivot over to the spreadsheet. And interrupt me if there's any questions if the option isn't clear, but I think they all are. Option 1A includes, it's the same as option one, where it would increase the agency's contribution to the City Hall project by $1 million, but it would also delay the project and increase the internal reserve contribution by an additional $1 million. So you can see down below how what that changes. The urban renewal increases to $3.25 million. The city reserve contribution increases $1 million to 3.375, and the GO bond is reduced to 2.375. Little discussion, pros and cons. Again, you have the $1 million from that's reallocated is a negative. The reduction in the GO bond is a positive, at least in terms of potential voter approval. The big thing on increasing the reserves contribution by $1 million. So the negative, of course, is you're taking money from the departments, the funds, and putting it over towards this project. So it will potentially delay it by a year, although I had a flash of inspiration that said, you probably don't have to delay it. Janet certainly can figure something out that you can stay on your schedule, not incur the additional price escalation that the architect talked about, that 5% to $180,000. But certainly the departments would look at this as a negative because, again, this is money coming from their funds. I'll also point out that the way that you would pay for that, at least with water, sewer, and power and light, would be through rate increases. That's, the money comes from somewhere, and this is going to put pressure on increasing in your rates. So that's 1A. 2 increases the urban renewal contribution from 1 million to 1.4 million. So you can see now the agency's contribution is $3.65 million. Reserves go back to the original amount that we've been working on, the 2.375, and the GO bond would drop to 2.975. And at this point, with option 2, because you start to see the redundancy that happens between those, I'll just pivot over to 2A. So this one again increases the agency's contribution to $1.4 million and includes an additional $1 million contribution from city reserves, coming from your various funds: water, sewer, power and light, building fund, general fund. I think that's all of the funds that would contribute to the project. Now 2A, given that, reduces, this is the big benefit, is it reduces the GO bond to $1.975 million, seemingly a pretty attractive number given the size and magnitude of the project. But again, there's that's offset by these negatives, reallocating money from other urban renewal projects, reallocating money from other department fund projects and activities for an additional year. So anyway, those are the options real quick, and I will pause before we go to the spreadsheet to see if there's any questions to clarify any of the options. Okay, and I will admit that I have a spreadsheet up in front of me that's not the one that Janet is showing you. It's just a little easier for me to see.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Dr. Charmer.
Do we, if you're postponing the project for the city hall for another year, do we have a safe place where our employees can work for that extra year? Because, after a pandemic and then wildfires, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we had an earthquake sometime this year. And I'd really like to see Phyllis and everybody working in a safe place.
Shame on you. Don't even say it.
Well, it'd be a hat trick.
It would definitely. 2020 is not a good year. I'll give you that. But the short answer is no. We don't have a place to move to. We could do something, but I think that would be a short-term solution, assuming the project moves forward. But like I said, I had this inspiration that said, I think that you could work to not delay the project a year, save the escalation, that 5% discussion that the architects talked about, and so you would stay on project on the schedule, but you would end up having to borrow some money from internal funds and then pay it back through fund contributions. So you would just kind of advance yourself the money, the additional $1 million, and then in 2023, that year, you would repay it back internally. Yeah.
But to Dr. Sharmer's question about relocation possibilities, we do have some internal resources that we're looking at as far as having a safe place to house some of City Hall's workers on a temporary basis if the project only goes for a year.
Yeah, if the project moves forward, then we would make every effort to relocate all of our staff. And I saw Chris, you had one.
I think Mr. Schinkel had his hand up first. He can go next.
Thanks, Chris. So these numbers are based on what kind of timeline for completion of the project, Jen?
There's two issues that we would have to continue to evaluate. The first one is with the $4 million loan that the agency and the city council has approved, we would have to carve out a piece of that amount so we would have to take a look at the basket and see how we kind of move the agency's contribution over to that project. So that would be the first exercise. And it would probably have to come from part of the $4 million, part of, you may have to look at some internal borrowing, but it becomes dependent on the second big thing, which is the GO bond. So if the GO bond under any option doesn't get approved, then you're back to square one. So those are the two. The first one, I'm confident that we could figure out a strategy to provide the city's share towards the project. Janet?
My question is, I'm looking at these numbers as prices. How long are these prices good? I mean, assuming that we complete this thing by such and such date, these numbers generally hold.
They hold through the, let's say the summer of 2021. So the architect included the 5% escalator if it got delayed through March 22. That's where the 280,000 escalator he put on, assuming that the price index and the project price would go up. So I would think that based upon what FFA said, these numbers should be good through, let's say, June 21.
So a little less than a year, these numbers are generally good.
Correct.
Okay.
And the numbers being the project cost.
Sure.
These are, yeah. So I would say, yeah, they're good for a year. That's what the architect told us.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, I'll jump in here. Great question there, Mr. Schinkel. So I want to dial back to something that you had said earlier, Chad, about potential rate increases. Under option 1A and 2A, is it my understanding that both of those options, even though we may be able to, Janet may be able to work some of her magic and, you know, not incur that delay from the start date, but that both of those options would likely result in rate increases to some extent in city services. Is that correct?
Yeah. There's so, you know, just like with any other capital projects, you know, the capital, as we talked about before during the water master plan and some of the other work we've been doing, the rates are going to be driven by your capital improvement plans. This being, let's just add this to the list. So whether it's asbestos concrete pipe that's being replaced or the city hall, you know, as you do capital projects, that's what puts pressure on your rates.
Yeah, the only magic that I would do is create an interfund loan from reserves that we have, for example, in our whether it be in our sewer fund or our system development charge funds, and we could front the funds that would then be repaid by the funds that are contributing to the reserves.
Yeah.
And that's where the rate increase would likely come in, because those funds could not necessarily absorb another $1 million reserves or contribution
Increase.
Yeah. But for clarity, the options under option 1 or option 2 would not incur those same rate increases.
Not necessarily.
Yeah,
I mean, we have already anticipated building in those reserves in the 5-year plans for our budget, as you know. And as you look out over the 5-year horizon, depending on what other capital projects are being absorbed in those funds that are making contributions, there may be rate increases for that reserve contribution or for other CIP projects or all of the above.
Yeah, but you do have this reflected, the 2 million reflected in the 5 years.
I do.
Yeah.
So let me revise my question then, because I seem to have been overly broad. Those rate increases would not be due to this specifically, aside from what's already planned out.
Correct. That's fair.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so let me walk
Just
you.
John,
Oh,
one more.
I apologize.
Well, just to close the loop on the, well, not close the loop, but add another ring to it. You know, if we continue to pull $1 million a year out of our enterprise funds, the majority of our enterprise funds anyway, you know, and you layer on the other things I think that Janet suggested, there's going to be reasons for rate increases, and those can be easily justified. Personnel costs, inflation, and need to expand a particular service. What is the most difficult to defend is, well, we're going to increase your water rate because we're pulling money off to pay for the city hall. Now, that becomes, because that is part of the budget. That is part of the reserve. So that becomes more difficult to defend in my mind. So I'm not a big fan of increasing that. I like, you know, I think we're sort of walking the tightrope on that one as it is.
Thank you, John. I think we're walking a tightrope on the whole thing.
Yeah, agreed. It is much easier, obviously, to ask voters for money for a library, for something that they will all walk in and use regularly. A police station, a little more difficult. And our ability to explain to the public why we would ask for voter money for City Hall will be difficult yet again. But I tend to agree with you. I'd rather ask for it directly for that than through the mechanism of continually having to salt money away to eventually replace a building that, as Dr. Sharmer points out, could go anytime.
Yep.
And it's going to be a lot more expensive to replace it if we have to do it suddenly than if we get the plan.
Yep. Agree with all of them. Okay, so just to kind of walk you through and show you the impacts that the option 1 and option 2 have, the $1 million or the $1.4 million. So on the first spreadsheet, I think that I'm on page 16. So the first one is a category for water system improvements. And you can see nothing highlighted in yellow and no numbers over in the green columns. So that means that there would be no reallocation from water projects. The second category is for sewer projects. And you see nothing highlighted in yellow and nothing over in the green columns. So no sewer projects would be impacted. The third one is the transportation system, and this one is a little bit more difficult to explain, but so you can see the yellow, and I'll use the first one, the Highway 51 pedestrian improvements, as the example. So the original plan included $250,000 that could be used for pedestrian improvements, basically east of Highway 99 to the S-curves. And so in looking at this, I did not want to impact it, but in the first year, so you see that in option 1 column, there's nothing. So a contribution would be only if the council or the agency decided to go after option 2, the $1.4 million. we would move $50,000 from Highway 51 pet improvements to the City Hall project. Hoffman Road improvements.
So the 50 should be highlighted yellow, not the 200.
No, this is what year you take it in, doesn't matter. It
Right.
could be the first one, but yeah, just because it's 50 and 50 didn't mean.
Okay, just take 50 probably.
just
out of
50.
the second year. So
That's what I was looking at, the
Got it.
second year, so you could get started and
do something.
do something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Now, the second one, Hoffman Road improvements, bike ped improvements. So this one, we had quite a bit of conversation about with staff as we were reviewing this. And so you have to look at the two $100,000 contributions to the project as it relates to the total project, $2.6 million. So $2.6 million is a turnkey project from start to finish. However, in talking this project through with Russ, your Public Works Director, as to, is this a doable project at $2.6 million within a 5-year time frame? And given the fact that you're going to have other partners participating in the project, certainly, hopefully the county, Polk County would participate in this project. We couldn't come up with a construction project. So the $200,000 that we included are placeholder numbers that we put in for planning and pre-development work. So if you need to hire consultants, engineers, or something to initiate the project, thinking of it being outside your 5-year time frame, that's what that $200,000 is. So again, I said, well, I don't want to take all of that. So in the option 1 column, it's $100,000. And in the option 2 column, there's no change. So when you see it show up, there's no change. So there would still be $100,000 available for pre-development work related to that project, whether it's in 24, 25, those fiscal years. It would be up to the agency and Public Works to work that out. Downtown corridor pedestrian improvements. So this one, again, being loath to take money from brick and mortar type projects, I didn't include anything there in year 1. I did hit either fiscal year 21 or 22 for $50,000 in this option number 2. Thinking that probably given some of the work that the agency is doing downtown, so we have the library is doing some sidewalk work, Larry Dalton is we're reimbursing him about $5,000 for some of his work. You'll notice today that it's being replaced now. That's being paid for out of these funds. But you may not, at the end of fiscal year 21, you may not use up the entire 100,000. So that, but that's just the thinking that goes around it. But 50,000 would be for option 2. The Northeast Regional Park and the Ash Creek Trail project are both projects that are identified or clearly identified in the urban renewal plan. But again, the magnitude of those projects within the 5 years, it's like either you had to start those sometime within the past 5 years in order to be further along towards construction. So the magnitude is too big and probably too standalone at this time to go out and just build a project. So the 300,000 that's included for both of those were placeholder numbers to be used for pre-development work. And you'll notice that in option 1 for both of those, I cut those in half, so you still would have $150,000 for pre-development work for those 2 projects. Option 2, I bumped that up to $200,000 each. I still wanted to leave some money in there so you could do some planning and pre-development work. The MRE improvements, so that's specifically the skate park project, which is not within the district right now. So there would be a required minor amendment related to that project. Option 1 would take $75,000 away from that project, so would reduce it to $100,000 towards construction, and the $30,000 in FY21 is thought to be for design work and some pre-development work and things like that. And in the second option 2, you'll see that was bumped up to $100,000. Again, knowing these type of projects, if the agency wanted to do it and do the minor amendment to include it in its district, these are general fund type projects. They are just, you just typically don't have funds available to do it. And if you don't have some kickstart money from the agency to put in, you're really starting at a disadvantage when you go out and make grant applications to the Oregon Parks and Rec, for example, with their local government program. So I think it is important to keep some money there if you want to include, go after that project. Okay, power and light, so nothing was impacted there. And the final category, community development facilities. So this is some of your more soft cost categories. So these would be incentives, the downtown redevelopment project and the economic development fund, for example. Those are categories of incentives or contributions that you could provide to specific projects, similar to what we talked about tonight with the Monmouth Commons project. So, for example, either one of those 2 line items could contribute towards those type of private redevelopment or development projects. So again, I think that those are super important. So under option 1 or 2 related to the downtown redevelopment projects, I reduced it by 20%, so 100,000 coming off of the 500,000. I'm going to skip over the Gateway Arch for a minute and come back to that. The Economic Development Fund. So ideally, we were including $750,000 for that. This reduced under both options 1 and 2. We reduced it from $750,000 to $500,000 to put in. So again, redevelopment projects or the Economic Development Fund can be used towards a variety of projects, such as the IOOF, the Oddfellows Lodge, that project, Monmouth Commons, discussion about the grants, the sanitation out on the highway would be an example, trying to re-site them to a different location. And so the Gateway Arch. Now the Gateway Arch is specifically identified, excuse me, I'm starting to get a little dry here, is identified in your urban renewal plan. I know the importance of entrance gateway type projects. City of Rainier included a gateway project that we tied into a big ODOT project, and it cost about $100,000. I don't know if you ever saw that. With the obelisk and the wall and the landscaping and things like that. It was really a fantastic project. It was lovely. Yeah. So I understand the importance for it, but it becomes a issue of what's more important. John, I expect you to say, well, this came up during our discussion the other night during the Economic Development Committee, where they really want to do some type of wayfinding gateway arch type project. I agree. But that being said, you have to have $300,000 for that project. And my answer is no. You can reduce it to half, $150,000, which would be substantive. Oh, she is the nicest person I know.
Remember that.
Thank you. She already got her position approved and everything.
That's right. Yeah, Suzanne just brings
Are you doing
water.
her
In addition to
evaluation
all of her
before you
other
leave?
job duties, she'll bring you water when you're.
So the Gateway Arch is impacted by 50% for option 1 and 100% in option 2. And then the downtown lighting and display, again, I just cut it in half in option 1 and zeroed it out in option 2. So again, not to say that they're not important, but there will be other funds that you can put towards some of these projects. Certainly you can see the discussion tonight. There's there's synergy that happens. You can use, you can just have, this is the part of this whole thing that I really enjoy. There's a lot of ways to do this. And it doesn't have to be 100% urban renewal in order to accomplish projects and priorities that are in the plan.
And some of those things can be local fundraising. And
I'm not a super big fan, only because how hard it is to do those. Although Rainier raised $75,000 in private fundraising for its pool project.
did St. Helens also get some for the
I am sure.
flame?
Oh, geez, the flame. So anyway, that's taken the agency through kind of how I worked my way through from reallocating money from specific projects to the City Hall project. I will just admit up front that I'm more of a fan of option 1 than I am of option 2, because I do think that your participation in some of these projects are really important. You're already contributing or identified $2.25 million to the project. 3.25 is, more than a third of the project. And I would say, that to me would be, is generous. But it's also City Hall projects are notoriously difficult to finance because as the chair said, these projects compared to libraries and senior centers and pools and public safety facilities, they just don't sizzle. The folks don't understand the why of the need. And I do appreciate Dr. Charmer's comment because obviously it needs to be replaced. And I will just make one comment to John's comment about it. I understand the thing about, using, it's not all enterprise money. The general fund is in, the building fund is in. So it's not all just enterprise, and the general fund would be a pretty significant contributor to the project. And I do appreciate that. But what I'm going to say, is that completing the project is more important than some of these things. It's a 100-year thing that you're trying to complete that is sustainable, that is safe for your residents and for your employees and things like that. So I think whatever you do, you got to do it. And if you say, well, let's not increase the contribution $1 million, well, you're certainly going to have to increase the bond request by that same amount. And and this is the balancing act that the agency and the city council is going to have to do is what's going to pass. Is it 2 million? Is it 3 million? I'm giving you an option. I'm not saying it's tasty. It's an option. And I'll stop with that.
Yeah, this is pretty incredible work to do this all in a short period of time when these kinds of things we could have been thinking through for years. Darren.
So I heard, Chad, you said that our numbers were good through June or basically summer of 21. So if we're going to do a general obligation bond, help me with the timing. I think you talked a little bit about it once before, but refresh, I guess, how the timing would work on that, because that's not a very long period between now and then.
You would be shooting for a May 2021 election. So that would be not a double majority election, right?
No, that's yeah.
So you do want to stay away from a double majority election.
Right.
I think that's the earliest you can do it and still maintain the schedule where you don't have to worry about the project escalation.
Yeah. So then I guess the piece on that one is then, what you got to back off to get all geared up to make that all happen. And so that's what I was trying to think through what it would take to do that if it's made. Yeah.
So I think I made mention of this in either the city manager's report or something. Suzanne and I had a debrief with the FFA, and what I asked them to do is to give us a project scope that would be sufficient, that you felt comfortable with the numbers, but short of construction documents. They can have that finished, they say by the end of this calendar year, so December 31st. That being said, January, probably. But that way you would be able to continue on the project, collect additional information, be working towards it, and then if you wanted to, you could pause and wait for the election before you continued on. Now, then you would have to, after the election, though, you would have to pivot straight over to construction drawings and permitting and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a question, do you want to build in a stop, period, and then wait for the election? Or do you want to go ahead and do all of it? Now, to complete design and construction documents, I think the number, not including construction administration towards the end, but certainly up through May, you would be in for probably $400,000. So you could do that and be ready to go immediately after the election, or you could pause and then you would have to kind of pick it back up and take a few months to complete the construction documents.
And as you're thinking, Darren, too, backing up from the election is a lot of other work, not just this commitment of the funds and how much you want to think through, but what do we do to get a bond going? The sort of public relations work, or maybe even polling about the amount, right? I believe we did that for the police station. About how much would the community show support for funding an actual city hall and do some of that work, and that would have to start before.
And I did do that with Carlton right before I left, and it was a full 4 to 6 months of just, it was a sprint to the May election.
Right. We'd be gone soon. Not tonight. We don't have to decide tonight. Lane, and then
just going to expand on that. Looking at the May election, we would have to have a resolution referring a measure out in March sometime. I'm not sure of the March date. Of course, in order to get that, we'd have to have bond counsel engaged, probably at least a month. I'd say maybe 45 days before that. So we would have to be pretty seriously engaged even on the election process by the very beginning of February. Not to mention the public relations and education piece that would have to be occurring at the same time. So just giving you an idea of the work to get to that March date for the resolution in order to get on to the May ballot.
Yeah, thanks, Darren.
Well, I was gonna say one more thing is, also I think when we had, if I remember right, anyhow, I think it was a May election for the police bond. And at that point, I think in January, we were starting the PAC and all that. I remember at the time, it was even a month earlier, so we could have doubled years. And so, I mean, there's lots to think through and get going if that's the process we're headed down.
Yep, I agree. Roxanne?
I guess I'm kind of reiterating what you said. I cannot emphasize enough how important the marketing and outreach of this kind of bond measure is. And I've been a part of 4 bond measures for Chariots, and every one of them did not have the oomph, did not have the support. They did some phone calling, they had a couple signs. We absolutely have to work with our community and make sure that they understand this is their building. This is for them. I mean, it's important because we need a structurally sound building, but we have to make sure that the community is willing to vote for this. So please don't underestimate what that's going to take. So we need to be starting this in November or December.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's what I'm saying. Backing up, there's lots of legal deadlines, but there is a lot more than that to do. Hopefully we'll get Marty on board because she's excited about participating in this project. So she would be able to hit the ground running on it. John.
I think in the interest of expediting this and getting things moving, because I think both Darren and Roxanne are right on in terms of the need for the outreach piece. One of the things that I think we're going to need to figure out is how much are we going to be asking in a general obligation bond. To me, I can't make that decision until we really haven't had, to my knowledge, and maybe I missed the meeting, haven't had an in-depth discussion about the capital improvement projects and how they relate to the original document that set up this urban renewal agency. I don't know that I've read the original agreement, the 2005 deal, and to be able to index those, because I'm seeing a lot of infrastructure things which are important, but how do they rise? If we can ship some money up, because to me the city hall is a big deal. I mean, that is something that we need to have, and if we can, for the downtown, for the urban renewal of downtown, that will make a big impact. So to be able to index those projects that we have on the list against the original agreement would be helpful for me. Maybe we've done it and I just have missed it, but I'd like to get documents to be able to do that again if we have.
Okay, thanks, John. And I think, again, tonight, we don't need to make any of these decisions. We don't need to pick between option 1 or option 2. And it is far past our 9 o'clock time. This is really a starter discussion about these changes and about firming that up. I think it's important for us to continue this discussion, really, especially talking about if we want to get a sense of what the contribution the community is willing to make. It is a crappy time to go out and start doing public opinion polls. Oh my goodness gracious. But trying to work towards that and figure out that piece would help, John. Then we would decide, does this rise? Where does this fit? As far as reviewing back to the original plan and stuff, I think Chad's covered that quite a bit, or we've covered that just by presentation of those documents. Maybe not in the last few months, but in the last year and a half, I think we had a presentation by Scott. We can pull some of that. Maybe each of us can review that on our own so that we're not really going in depth at our next meeting on this topic, if that's okay.
So, yeah, part of that is staff, and Lane certainly has spent a lot of time looking at the urban renewal plan and the report to identify, what the urban renewal agencies.
Well, and Elaine,
Well, Elaine as well, she participated in the discussion, but then, we circled back with our legal counsel to talk to him about the participation. And I think, so, of course, I agree with, with what you guys are saying, but at the same time, as Lane pointed out, and the chair pointed out, you are under time constraints to move forward. And quite honestly, deciding, if I had to say, do you have time to spend a couple months polling the community to determine what they could, approve and things like that, you're not going to be able to hit May for that. And so to me, the question I'm trying to answer to move the project forward is, are you willing to reallocate $1 million from other projects to this? And I do want to point out something going back to Chris's comments. So the infrastructure is protected, water, sewer, electric. That's protecting rates. So the Urban Renewal Agency contributes towards capital improvement projects for those enterprise activities. That's putting a downward pressure on rates. that's why I didn't take those monies and put them over here, because I'm cognizant that there's this relationship between the CIP for the enterprise funds and rates. Now, and I might have misunderstood John, but I will point out that certainly you could reallocate some infrastructure funds to this project, because you do have system development fees and enterprise fund reserves that you could contribute to the project in lieu of urban renewal. I just tend to think that that's not the preferred option if I had my choice, because especially listening to the budget committee's discussion about rates and seeing how difficult that whole discussion was, you want to protect your infrastructure improvements, but certainly, you know, if the agency, and you don't have to decide tonight, but if the agency says we're sitting good at $2.25 million, that decision is beneficial sooner than later. If you want to increase it by $1 million, that answer is better sooner than later, because it has a direct impact. If the city council, not the agency, says we don't want to contribute another $1 million of funds, but the sooner we have that, the better, because it's going to answer the question that Lane has to have as he goes to work on the resolution. What's the GO bond amount that you're asking the public to contribute? And we've narrowed it down so you know about what that is under option 1, or, you know, you can see it's going to be somewhere between $2 and $4 million, kind of just roughly speaking.
So unless somebody feels strongly about really pinning that down and giving that guidance, how much the Urban Renewal Agency is willing to contribute, and we want to pick a number tonight, we can.
Yeah, but you don't have to.
But we don't have to. So I will entertain the will of the group for about 20 seconds here. Because I'm either going to say, let's go ahead and talk that through for a few minutes, or let's shut this down and come back with fresh eyes.
I hear what Chad is saying, and I don't know if I could put a number on it right now. I feel like I'm drinking from the water hose right now, or the fire hydrant.
I do think that we need to decide what it is that we think is a reasonable way to finance this thing, bearing in mind that all the different resources that we can bring to bear, and then make a case to the public. You know, while it sounds good to be able to go out and pull, well, what will pass and what won't pass, you end up being, you know, I mean, we've got to provide some leadership on this. And I'm all for being sensitive and reactive to the community, but at the same time, we've been wrestling with this for a long time. And we'll come up with a number, and then if we can't justify it and sell it, then it's the wrong number. So I think we've got to be the point on this thing. And we just don't have time for the data that might be nice otherwise.
And let's not forget the context as well of all of our rate increases that are happening right now too. So this isn't, you know, we're not operating in a vacuum, and we've got to, it may impact some of those rate increases, or it may impact the stormwater utility rate or something like that. I mean, this is a complex discussion.
Yeah, but it also will show up on a property tax bill. So
Bring it back to you in October.
So I'm going to ask Chad and Janet to go ahead and let's bring this back. We will convene the Urban Renewal Agency at the first October meeting, have a chance to think this through, look through it, consider those options. If you need to do research, Chad can pull up the original plan again or any of these other discussions and kind of repackage them for your thinking. And we'll talk about it then. So the last agenda item was a resolution if we decided to move forward with this, but we do not need to do that at this point. So we will hold off on that as well.
Can I just make a comment related to that? So Lane is the one who worked on the resolution specifically. It's creating kind of a findings as to the agency's ability to participate in that, because given some of the legal hoops that you have to jump through. We went through, and when I say we, I mean Lane went through that exercise of the ability of the agency to participate based upon when it was adopted and things like that. So that's what the resolution is supposed to answer. And then Lane, before you jump in, if you need to, I do want to point out that we also had a discussion. Lane suggested, well, what about if we take all of the CIP projects that you see here and tie that into the resolution that provides findings as to how those projects relate to the 2005 Urban Renewal Plan, which I think goes to some of your discussion. So because as most plans, some of the categories are clear as to what projects they want to participate in, and some are less clear.
Yeah, if I can on that, Chad, I think I wasn't so much interested in putting all of that in the resolution, but more as an information piece for the council. And understand, council, what you need to know is that these projects on the CIP either were identified as projects in the original plan and report, or they are consistent enough with the projects and the purpose of the plan as it was adopted that you don't need to go through a major or minor amendment process to approve them. And that's really what the resolution says, that either these projects that are on the CIP are in the plan, or they are of a piece with the plan in such a way that they don't fall in the criteria that trigger a major or minor amendment in order to approve. So you may not find all of these projects specifically identified in the plan, but the purpose of the resolution is to say that they are enough a part of the plan and the purpose and the scope of the plan that we don't have to come back and start with an amendment to the plan to do it. It also addresses certain findings at City Hall that respond to specific issues in 2019 legislation, clarifying that we have the authority to include a public building project in the original plan, and again, the plan doesn't have to be amended in order to do what you're proposing to do. That's the general purpose of the resolution. And I can go into that in more detail when we get to actually considering it, but it really is, as Chad said, it's a findings document that supports your ultimate decision to adopt the CIP. In hearing the conversation, I'll probably want to have a footnote put on the skate park where it appears in the CIP, because that would require an amendment because it's not in the area. I think it's fine to have it in that CIP, but we'll want a footnote on the CIP that says this can't be actually undertaken until there is an amendment to include that area in the Urban Renewal Agency. But otherwise, structurally, it's ready to go.
Great. Yeah, I was just going to ask about that, how we would deal with that based on that footnote. So, all right, if everyone is okay to proceed that way, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the Urban Renewal Agency meeting and return to council.
So moved.
Thank you, Darren. And all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. We are adjourning this meeting of the Monmouth Urban Renewal Agency and returning to City Council. The only reason for that would have been if we had made any particular changes to the debt service agreement, the full faith and credit agreement, or if we had moved this forward and needed to act. But since we have done no changes, I'm checking with Lane, and he will nod at me to say, he will show his thumb up to say that we have no further business before the council this evening, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn the city council meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Roxanne, and thank you, Chris, for the second. And we are all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you all for your patience with this process, and have a lovely night, and pray for rain.
Yeah, absolutely.